Hi everyone, welcome to my storm chasing adventures. Today we're going to discuss my adventures on Monday, May 20th, 2024 in Nebraska. And I was with my co-pilot, my eldest child, Elliot Usinski, and on this day we potentially saw a funnel cloud. It had just been scud clouds, I don't know. But I was located about 28 miles northwest of Lincoln, Nebraska. You can see on this map here. The pink shaded box is a severe thunderstorm watch box. Over here on the left-hand side, you can see there was a tornado watch box on the left, and over here to the northeast, there was another severe thunderstorm watch box. And here's a little bit of close-up, and the time that this actually occurred was around 8:12 p.m. And first of all, I'd like to talk about a prologue. So everything that happened prior to 6 a.m. on May 20th when I traveled from Buffalo to Kansas City, Missouri on Sunday, May 19th. So let's go back in time. And I have to give a shout out because I'm a proud father. And these are my two children. And the oldest is Elliot, who joins me on storm chasing. And the youngest graduated the previous Thursday, which would have been May 16th, from the UB Honors College. And then she graduated again, but this time with her Bachelor of Science in Biomedical Engineering on Saturday.
Danielle Usinski.
And one of the professors that she worked with in a lab, she just gave a hug to on the stage. Here's a picture of her from the graduation ceremony afterwards. So Danielle is not a storm chaser, although Danielle is welcome to join me anytime she would like to. So when I checked the Storm Prediction Center forecast earlier before the graduation ceremony, day one wasn't missing anything. This is Saturday, May 18th. And then day two had an enhanced area, which would be Sunday over central Kansas. Well, unless I could teleport, there was really no way I was going to make it all the way to central Kansas for storm chasing on Sunday. Day three had a pretty large slight area. So my target area was try to end up in this area so that we could plan ahead for Monday, May 21st. And then if you look ahead to day four and the rest, this is when things were getting, unfortunately, the ingredients were coming together for a severe weather outbreak. And this would be Tuesday. And for a day four to have a 30%, kind of unusual. This is a pretty high probability that severe weather would occur in this vicinity. Day five didn't have anything, or the predictability was too low. And then on day six, an unusual 15% area. So it looked like if I was out here in the plains, I could storm chase. There was going to be some storms that week. This was the storm reports. I just want to show this every time, like for each day. So this is what happened on Monday. As you can see, not a lot of severe weather. So we packed the Honda Pilot on Saturday night and we left bright and early at 5:45 a.m. Well, this kind of sucked. What a way to start the trip. At our first rest stop in Ohio, around noon, I played my Wordle game, and you can see the current streak was 0 and the max streak was 473. I had a streak going that was over a year and just lost it. Here was my puzzle. You can see Patrick from SpongeBob is a little sad. This is the trip I ended up doing. You can see this is in Google Timeline. I left the house. This is the path I took to get all the way over out west. All right, target was Topeka, Kansas, so that it would be more in the center of that slight area. But let me show you what was happening with that moderate risk in central Kansas. When I woke up Sunday morning, I checked the Storm Prediction Center again, and they had issued overnight this moderate risk area for severe weather in central Kansas. Unfortunately, I was still located in Buffalo, and there really wasn't any chance of me arriving in time for this event. So let's take a look at some more details here. This was actually issued at 1:38 a.m. Central Daylight Time. All right, so let's take a look then at the details. So day one was a severe event that was predicted to occur in central Kansas. And the main threat was there's a 5% chance of tornadoes in this region. But the main threat, if you look, was the wind damage. And so they were actually predicting that a derecho was going to form, which is an organized complex of thunderstorms that end up producing a bow echo with very strong winds of 80 to 100 miles an hour. And there was also a high probability of hail as well. The hatched area means that it was damaging hail, and same thing here with damaging winds. So that was the day I'm driving. Luckily, along my route, as I was going to get there from Buffalo to Kansas City, there really wasn't any weather. But of course, I'm now looking at the next day because I want to see where I need to go in terms of storm chasing. So I wanted to get out somewhere over here. It looked like they were extending the slight back towards northeastern Colorado. So my goal initially when I left Sunday morning was to get to Topeka, Kansas. Let's see what the tornado probabilities were. So the tornado probabilities were kind of light. There wasn't really going to be a main area for tornadoes, just a broad area of 2%. All right. So then day 3, which would be Tuesday, they were still advertising this huge severe event that was going to occur mainly over Iowa and northern Missouri. And then if I look ahead to days 4, 5, and 6, so on Wednesday, it looked like maybe I would want to try to get down to southeastern Oklahoma. And then the 15% area was still being advertised a little bit further west, but southern third or southeastern third of Oklahoma. So this still looked promising. And then Friday and Saturday and Sunday, there really wasn't anything predicted. Predictability was too low, which is usually expected. It's hard to predict that far out in advance. Okay, so from here, let's go back to my trip. So I checked out the maps before I left. And again, my destination was Topeka, Kansas. All right, so what you have up on the screen now is a 4-panel display from, in the center is the radar location, which is KTWX, which is Topeka, Kansas. And what I have up here in these 4 different areas is what you would see traditionally on the Weather Channel or your local news, which is just the base reflectivity of the precipitation. On the top right, if you do watch some storm chasing videos or tune into some channels on YouTube, they typically will show storm relative velocity. You can depict how strong the winds are by how bright the colors are. Then bottom left is correlation coefficient, another great tool to use from the radar, which actually measures the size of the particle compared to what's next to it. And on the bottom right is differential reflectivity. All right, so let me put this into motion so we can see how this weather evolved. This is 1 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And as time is progressing, you can see a storm develops and quickly there's a tornado signature with it. The purple means an observed tornado as it's moving right along I-70. And then what you'll see it evolve into is this derecho event where you end up with this bow echo, and behind that curving part of the storm, the winds are very strong. You can see how quickly it's progressing now to the east. So here's the same radar loop, but without all the watches so that you can actually see what's happening as it progresses. All right, so that was one centered on Topeka. I wanted to show the one also closest to Kansas City. So here's Kansas City, Missouri, and their radar picking up the same event as it's coming into Kansas City. So I'm going to stop this. Okay, so right here, it is 0Z, which is 7 p.m. local time, 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time. I'm located, probably around here in Missouri, somewhere in the middle there. And I have to make a decision whether I'm still going to go to Topeka or if I'm going to stop. Well, I still had to eat dinner, and Culver's was on the way. So we decided, okay, we'll stop for a quick dinner and try to get to a hotel in Kansas City. Let's take a look at this radar. Let me let it run. And again, this is the one without the storm warnings, so you can actually see the event as it went through. We ended up staying northeast of Kansas City. So this did blow through. All right, so here's a geocolor satellite, visible satellite loop of the day. In the center of the screen, you can see Kansas, and you can see all the clouds associated with that warm front lifting to the northeast as the warm front's progressing. And right in the middle, you can see that supercell that was forming along I-70 that put down the tornado. This is quite a big storm, and this is roughly around 2:30 p.m. local time. All right, let's see this thing progress some more. And you're going to see how this thing evolves into a huge thunderstorm complex and derecho system as time goes on. You can see the overshooting tops, which is really cool. There was some activity down in Oklahoma as well. All right, so you can see over here some blue colors. Those are basically low clouds, and you can see that they're coming from the northeast. All right, so let's take a look at what the surface maps were showing in this vicinity. So earlier in the day, this is 10 a.m. Central Daylight Time, you can see there was a lot of clouds, there was rain, these 2 dots, 3 dots, the colored in circles here, in northern Kansas and central Nebraska, north of the warm front. Let's see what happens as the surface and what happens on the surface map as we continue here. So you can see the warm front is making some progress heading north. Let's take a look at the next one. Now we're all the way almost up to the border between Kansas and Nebraska. And when you look at the 0Z one, which is 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time, you can now see in full effect the squall line being shown in derecho, if you will. And there's thunderstorms being reported at these weather locations. And you can see how this progresses then to 10 p.m. There's a low pressure that's associated with the storm here, and then with the derecho event right in this vicinity. Rain has just reached Kansas City, Missouri, and then it goes through Kansas City. You can see at about 1 a.m. All right. So then what I like to look at is I like to see, well, okay, let's see what the storm reports were that day and how this Storm Prediction Center did in terms of verification. So they actually have this readily available on their website, and they show like verification of where the storms occurred, and what the severe event was. So the red ones are tornadoes, the blue is wind, and the green is hail. So you can see, wow, there was quite the cluster of wind events near Kansas City, Missouri. And then as I'm looking at this, preparing to make this video, I noticed, wait a minute, there's tornadoes near Kansas City. What's going on? Let's take a look. All right, so there's a cluster of 4 tornadoes evidently that were near Kansas City. I didn't realize that there was going to be some that close. So what I did is I looked over here to see when they were actually reported. And I found out that, wow, these were at 3Z. So if I go back in time, that was after I had been checked into the hotel. I arrived around 9:30, probably got to the room around 10. And this is about 10:30 p.m. These tornadoes occurred. So how close were they to my location? So this is the distance using Google Maps to where I was staying in northeast Kansas City to where the tornado was. 21 miles away, there was a tornado in the suburbs of Kansas City. And then if you look at the radar, it is hard to depict when this is happening. Here's that line of storms, and it's hard to see even but I believe it's this notch right there. So let me zoom in on this. I think I have a zoomed in picture next. Here it is. Here's a notch right here. And in this notch, you can see there's so green is towards the radar is down here, and red is away. And so we do have some rotation that must have developed right there. Radar reflectivity, you can see right in this little area, this little notch area is where the tornado formed. So that was interesting because it happened so quickly that unfortunately there was never a warning issued. The second tornado that was close to where I was even closer, and it was down southeast of Mission, and it was only 13.7 miles away from where I was in the hotel. No idea that these tornadoes were on the ground. Again, let's take a look at the radar for this one and the timing that it occurred. So if you look here, we're southeast of Mission. I got to get closer here to see where I'm looking. I'm looking in this vicinity right in here. So let's take a closer look. And here we go again. We have like this notch that happened. See how there's this continuity, and then this line has this little jog in it. And that was enough for a EF1 tornado to spin up and do some damage in this neighborhood, which is kind of crazy. So the National Weather Service does a great job recapping severe events that happen. And on the Wichita, Kansas page, they do discuss the May 19th derecho and HP supercell. There's a picture here from someone on Twitter showing the cloud formations. And here were a couple of the tornadoes that were in central Kansas and some of the damage that was associated with it. And then a whole bunch of pictures of the hail that was associated with the supercell. You can see, unfortunately, someone's window was broken. So a lot of damage and a lot of information there. And then if you go to the Kansas City page, so the Kansas City Metro squall line and tornadoes, they have a nice visual here. And notice they actually had stronger winds. They used their radar here was showing how strong the winds were behind that derecho. So extremely strong as it was coming through. And one here in Shawnee, Kansas. So this is that path of that tornado as it was moving to the northeast. Was an EF1 tornado. That was the first one I showed you. That was 21 miles away. And the second tornado that was 13 miles away was right here, and here's some information on it. So both the National Weather Service did a great job of summarizing the event and getting pictures of the damage that was done with that derecho event that moved all the way into Kansas City, Missouri. Sunrise weather. So when I woke up at the hotel and we had our free complimentary breakfast, check out the hotel. Monday at 6:30 is when I ended up departing, but I wanted to check the weather to see what was going on. And one of the first things I like to look at are the the current observations and seeing what the morning looks like. So let's see what happens overnight. So this is again the end of the day. This is what the squall line. This is where it approaches. All right. So overnight, you can see what's happening. This is 1 a.m. This is 4 a.m. And this is 7 a.m. And we have this cold front draped across northwestern Kansas. And look at the temperatures here: 46, 48 northwest winds. These are some cold temperatures out here. But let me show you what my target area was. So when I looked at the Storm Prediction Center, in that same area, they had put out an enhanced area. And let me see what this looks like for tornado probability. So there's a 5% tornado probability. Remember, I'm located all the way over here in Kansas City. So I'd have to drive all the way across to get to this tornado potential. There was a pretty high probability of damaging winds and hail in that same vicinity. Again, looking at the surface map at 7 a.m. that morning, it looked like it was pretty cold out in this area, and the cold front was still advancing to the southeast. So let's take a look then at where I needed to be for day 2, because oftentimes when you're storm chasing, you look at where you want to be for this day, but you kind of want to be in position for the next day. And so if I look at day 2, they already had a moderate risk listed for southeastern Iowa. So if I were to drive all the way out to northeastern Colorado, extreme northeastern Colorado, I'd still have to come all the way back. So I wasn't keen on traveling out to this area. So I was going to mosey on down to western Kansas, check out to see how the storms were, and then come back towards the east. Let's take a look at what the probabilities were. Huge 10% area of tornadoes. The hatch means that greater than EF2 to EF5, so 10% greater probability. So that was a huge area, and I didn't want to miss this event and be out of position for it. So I was very hesitant to drive all the way across Kansas, but well, we're still going to try. It's my, you don't get out here much, so you have to drive a lot. Or I don't get out here that often to go storm chasing. For day 3, you can see that there was a slight area along the cold front, and my target maybe after chasing in Iowa was to maybe drop south into southeastern Oklahoma. And then again, if we look at the 4-day event, so day 4, which is Thursday, they still have that 15% area. It's gotten bigger from when they had previously had the prediction. And then day 5, nothing. Day 6, nothing. Day 7, nothing. And day 8. So predictability too low. So I guess if I was driving down to Oklahoma for that one event, I could stay in the same vicinity then for Wednesday and Thursday. So we left the hotel around 7:30 in the morning, and to get to Goodland, Kansas, which is in northwestern Kansas, it was going to be about 5 hours and 50 minutes if we had a couple stops in there, 410 miles. And, I would say like an hour and a half into my trip, I got a call from my friend John who said, you may not want to head all the way out to western Kansas and put yourself out of position for the next day. And the storms weren't going to develop that quickly back in northeastern Colorado and southwestern Nebraska. So we had a change of plans. So let me show you some of the things that helped make our decision. So you can see out in the target area, which is in good sunlight, but there's a lot of northeast winds here. And it looks like the front is still hung up here in northwestern Kansas. So it wasn't looking conducive to getting the moisture back into northeastern Colorado in a reasonable amount of time. So if there was going to be an event, it would be much later in the evening. And then I would have to drive all the way across Nebraska to get back into Iowa for the next day. And we decided then to travel north up into Omaha, Nebraska, where we thought that was a good place in terms of being on the western side of the event. And then we could travel east into Iowa. You can see here was my path out of Kansas City, Missouri. I had gone past Topeka, turned around, and then headed north. So we decided to head north. Here's my dash cam footage heading north. We're on Route 75 north. Our destination was Council Bluffs. This in the bottom left is how fast the time lapse is. It's 200 times normal. And in the bottom right is the date and time, but the time is still Eastern. So it really was 11:47 a.m. Central Daylight Time. So I'm going to let this run. And you can see we're just heading north, going up to Council Bluffs, which is in extreme western Iowa, just across the river from Omaha, Nebraska. Beautiful blue skies. And then, of course, we stopped at our favorite place. And As we're sitting at Culver's eating our dinner, again, I'm checking the weather. So this is the satellite loop through 3:30 p.m. And you can see we're located over here in western Iowa. And there really wasn't anything getting going. Like you can see over here, even out at 3:30 p.m., out in northeastern Colorado, nothing had fired up yet. And there still was all this low level moisture over Kansas. It's time for afternoon weather. We checked into the hotel, and it's time to check to see what the conditions are and how things are looking for tomorrow. So Elliot and I thought we had a nice restful evening ahead of us. So if we look at the surface map, let's take a look at 15Z, which is 10 a.m. 18Z, you can see that front was hung up over here. So we were trying to head west into this vicinity, and there was a cold front there. But then by 21Z, so this is 4 p.m., you can see all this moisture in this cloud cover here. All this is pushing back into this vicinity. And these temperatures have recovered quite nicely, 73, but the dew points are still low. And we were worried about the moisture not getting back into this vicinity. We had at just about 4 o'clock, 3:47 p.m., they put out what's called a mesoscale discussion, where they point to this vicinity and they say, convection along the front range will eventually spread eastward into the greater moisture, and a watch will be needed later this afternoon. So the target area that we were looking at does look like it was actually getting active. So probability of a watch, though, was still 60%. So then they issued a tornado watch in northeastern Colorado, where they had predicted the enhanced area. They didn't issue this, though, until 5:10 p.m. Central Daylight Time. It's 4:10 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So pretty late in the day for this to become active. And initial radar didn't even have storms firing in this box yet. So again, I would have been driving overnight to get all the way back out east if I had gone here. Now, did I have some FOMO? Not going to lie. Yes, I did. I thought, oof, we're missing our chance at seeing the storm. All right, so then another mesoscale discussion came out. At 6:06 p.m., they had this mesoscale, few scattered thunderstorms developing with a few supercells possible into mid and late evening, accompanied by a risk for severe hail. And I'm located right in this vicinity in Omaha, Nebraska, Council Bluffs, Iowa, Omaha, Nebraska area. And I'm like, wow, this is actually pretty close. This was issued at 6:06 p.m. So things were getting interesting. So does that mean they were going to issue a severe thunderstorm box? The chance of a box was only 60%. So not that high of a risk. So here's Omaha, and this is where we are. And the watch was issued just to our west at 6:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Well, when you're in Rome, you got a storm chase because you just never know. So this led to our mini chase. So I have another satellite image up. So just before I left for the chase, it's always good to check the satellite to see where the storms are firing. And you can see right in the vicinity around 6:30, some of these clouds start going right along the front. So my goal was to head towards southeast, head west along I-80 and see if I could catch up with those storms. We began our mini chase as we left the hotel at 6:39 p.m. Central Daylight Time and headed west. So our first target was just southeast Nebraska. We were going to see where the storms developed and then hone in on exactly where our location was going to be. So what I have is this program from QGIS, which I was able to plot my GPS data and do it temporally. And then what I did is I overlaid it on my dashcam video. So what I wanted to show is this was right around 6:30 p.m. just before. And I also was able to put into this program storm data that was reported and the watchbox data. So what's cool is that I can actually have things plot in real time. And let's watch what happens. So immediately you're going to see a purple line. That's the edge of the severe thunderstorm watch box. And then we jump into the car and you can see the bottom right here. My target now is Seward, Nebraska. So I'm heading down towards Lincoln, moving out here at a pretty good clip. This is 200 speed. And I will exit I-80 west of Lincoln. And I'm heading north now into Seward. And I'm coming out of Seward. And on the left, you can't see this with my dash cam, but I'm looking at some lowering that's to the left that looks interesting. And I come up to this intersection I'm on Route 15, Nebraska 15, and I come up to 25 Road and I pull over to see what I think is a funnel cloud. I don't know, it could just be scud. But at 20 speed, you can see there's a little bit of rotation, like broad-based rotation around this. And now this is at 10 speed. So things are moving and bubbling, and you can see the inflow into this thunderstorm complex. And then after this, I have it down to 1 speed. So it does take a while here at 1 speed, but I wanted to show you how long it kind of lasted. So I pull over. It was already in progress. What was interesting was that there was actually a tornado report about 30 miles to the southwest of this. So maybe there was some rotation along this front, or some of these storms are rotating, but I'm going to show the radar next. And there really isn't much rotation to see in the clouds on the storm relative velocity. So here are some stills that I grabbed from the radar, and where I was stopped and where I saw the potential funnel cloud. Probably just scud. I don't know. But it was still pretty cool. Good inflow. So this dot right here is where I was located. And I was looking just a little bit off this way. I don't know if I was looking all the way over here or just here at the edge of this, like right in this little hook area. So if I'm here, I can't really tell where I'm looking in terms of the wind velocity and where that is. Severe warnings that were also posted. All right, so then this is 5 minutes later. And again, I'm parked here looking to the east-northeast somewhere in this vicinity. Again, not seeing a ton here on the rotation. So I'm letting this play at 1 speed to show you like how long I actually parked here. And it does take a while for the for the cloud. So I will just be quiet as you observe this. I don't know how far away this is from the intersection. I'm guessing within 5 miles, so pretty close to where I was parked on the corner of 15 and 25 Road. 25 Road is that dirt road that's up ahead there. You can see in this picture right here. And I like the road sign there, minimum maintenance. Oh, now we're picking speed back up again. So it's just going to go through again. And then I'm going to pull away. So I decided to follow this north for a little bit. So I quickly turned left. You can see it looks like a huge lowering to the left, but it's really decoupled from the base of the storm. It just looks kind of scud-like. The scud clouds up further north. So when I took that left and I briefly parked and looked at the clouds, and I was like, oh, I got to get out of here because this was developing to my south and moving north. There was a little bit of differential wind, but very minor. So then this was 5 minutes later at 8:22. And this is when I was kind of in the mix of things. And I didn't want to get caught. I knew I had to take this road back to Omaha, and I didn't want to get caught in any hail. This is 27. So this is 8:27 again. I'm like right in the mix of this. Boy, things evolved quickly. Look at how fast those storms like kind of merged. Jeez. And then I drove back. But there were it was getting dark and it was raining. And if you look at the radar, things weren't going too well. So I was like, I'm going to head back to the hotel. So again, going back at here, I have it at 200 speed to get back. The entire round trip was about 3 hours, leaving the hotel and getting back to the hotel. So not bad for a mini trip, a mini storm chasing trip. Almost exactly 3 hours it took. All right, so next up, I'm going to show you some of the radars so we can take a look to see if that in fact was a funnel cloud. So this is the radar out of Omaha, Nebraska, and this starts at 20Z, which is about 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And so there's not much going on initially, but you can see these high clouds and this high level convection. And then all of a sudden, stuff kicks in here in the south here. Right along I-70. Now, this is with all the warnings and everything on it, but you can see as things progress towards Omaha overnight, yikes, there were some tornado warnings embedded. Here's the same loop with no warnings on it. So I wanted to stop at certain times. So this is just around 0Z. So we're looking at 7 p.m. Remember, I left the hotel around 6:30, so I saw. So right now we're at 8. So the observation I had of that potential funnel cloud, which could just be scud, was around 8:10 p.m. Central Daylight Time, right at sunset. So this right here is 8 o'clock. And if I keep going, here's 8:20. So I'm right in the mix of this convection area. If you look over here to the right at the velocity data, you can see there is some interesting velocity profiles here in terms of some going towards the radar, some moving away. Remember, green is towards, red is away. So who knows if there was like something in here that was embedded. But I'm going to run this through because there's a zoomed in section. I want to jump ahead here. So let me just let this play and I zoom in a little bit more so we can look at some of the features a little closer. Now I'm really zoomed in. All right, let me pause this just kind of show where we're at. So this is just about the time I left the hotel. So this is 6:40. So I've just left the hotel and I'm going to be coming down 80 here, and these storms were taking off. Also, there was a report of a funnel cloud as this down by some chasers around this time. I can't find it, but I was listening to one of those online those YouTubers, either it was Max Velocity or Ryan Y'all, and they were basically saying that someone had reported a funnel cloud in this vicinity. So anyway, let me let this play. And I'll pause it again when I get close. So you can see this storm here starts develops and rips to the north. So this is just north of Seward. So I am probably located just by Seward here as I'm driving north into this. Let me keep this going. And then here is exactly the time. So it's 8:11. And I was just south of David City, between Ulysses and Dwight, north of that. So I was parked right around in here, closer to Dwight than Ulysses, and looking to the east-northeast. So somewhere in this vicinity. So let's look over here at the velocity. There's not much really to see here. So maybe there were things that it was probably just inflow into the thunderstorm. All right, so that plays through. And then one last time, let me just do, let it play through without the warnings on it, because it's a cleaner picture, if you will. All right, here it comes. This is that storm that I end up following north. And you can see how it, again, this is the exact time. Wow, I did pretty good there hitting the pause, I have to admit. This is the exact time that I see the funnel cloud. So I'm looking in the vicinity over here. If we're looking over here again at the velocities, I don't know. Maybe it's in this area right here that these little brighter greens and I don't know. So at any rate, who knows if it's a funnel cloud or not, but it was pretty fun doing this chase that I didn't expect to do. And I'll just let this finish out. You can see how everything merges together and reorganizes and makes its way towards Omaha. And yeah, it was quite an interesting night. All right, so next up, I want to show you the satellite pictures because I love the visible satellite pictures and the infrared overnight. They just show so much good information. All right, so let's watch this. So right in this area here is where the front is set up. There is a cold front that was written or drawn in on the weather map. And you can see that right along there is where these storms start to fire. And just look at how those bubble up. So this is the infrared. Now, the infrared has a lower resolution. It's still, because it's part of the mesosector, still updates every minute. But you'll see immediately that the resolution has dropped off on this. This is starting at 1:30 or 8:30 p.m. Central Daylight Time. And this is just after I saw the funnel cloud and I was starting to head back to the hotel. I was located probably right about there. So underneath this huge blow up area, this inflow. All right, so let me let this run. And you can see overnight, wow, this thing really evolves. And then the stuff back here where they had the warnings out in northeastern Colorado, that developed, and then that heads east. So we'll talk about that in the next video as to what happens with these storms as they come across. And this ends at 12Z, which is 7 a.m. So at 7 a.m., here is what the cloud structure looked like, and then the sun was just coming up. I have a geocolor satellite picture I want to show you, so let's take a look at that one. I don't know if you love satellite pictures as much as I do, but I love these things, but you can just see everything that's happening at such a detailed resolution. So where I spotted that funnel cloud, I was located in, let's see here, I believe it was this county, right there. So right here where my cursor is. What's nice about this geocolor is it transitions into a higher resolution for overnight with the infrared, but it's a combination of some other satellite images stitched together. But boy, this one was really chugging along there overnight, doing quite a bit of wind damage over here in southern Nebraska. And then that, of course, ends again at 7 a.m. So this is my Google history of where I drove on Monday, May 20th. So even though it was a relatively short travel day. I did 412 miles, was on the road for 8 hours and 6 minutes. All right, so now we're up to good night weather. So get back at the hotel. What do? Just like every other time, you check out the forecast to see how things have evolved and changed and looked at for the next day. So we're going to take a look at the forecast next for Tuesday, which is supposed to be a pretty big severe weather day. So once we're back at the hotel, analyze the surface map again to see how the weather evolved during the day. You can see strong winds here from the east and the southeast brought moisture, the dew points, back up into northeast Colorado at around 7 p.m. All right, then 3 hours later, you can see the warm front has made a lot of progress moving further north. There's a thunderstorm reported here in northeast Colorado. So that moisture really did come back in, but not until later. So while I was at the hotel, we're getting ready to go to sleep for tomorrow's big day. This happened. So I'm in the hotel room and I took a screenshot off my phone because there was a tornado nearby. This is 11:24 p.m. local time, so just less than an hour that I returned to the hotel, and those storms were coming in on us. Now, one of the things I fear the most is having hail damage overnight from storms. Of course, I can't hide my car anywhere, so I kept an eye out to see how much of these things were hail. Now, they had a flash flood warning up. This is the green box, and this yellow was a severe thunderstorm. And then this was the velocity data all over the place. This couplet here, where there's a green and the red are really close together. And so that can typically be some type of rotation. So this was just radar indicated rotation. But there were all sorts of winds and so forth with this storm. You can see there's some reds here. The radar is actually over here, I think, to the northwest of Omaha. So red is going away and green is coming towards. Last but not least, next radar run, they put us in a big severe thunderstorm warning. See the big yellow box now? So I had to take another screenshot, and I needed to get to sleep because tomorrow I was planning to do a lot of driving into Iowa. So up next is the epilogue, where I try to take all the information of whatever happened during that day. And there were some tornadoes, there was some hail, wind, and some flooding, some flash flooding that had occurred with those storms. So I have this QGIS software, and I spent some time trying to program it with storm data and watch boxes and storm reports, I should say. So let me let this play. Unfortunately, it's going to flash because there's so much data that it takes a second for it to update. So it gives me like this little pulsing. So please ignore that. All right. So at 5:30, these boxes were issued. And then 6:30, this one was issued. Then you can see me take off on my little venture. There's some hail out here to the west. The black triangles are severe hail, which are 2 inches plus. And then you'll have the wind reports, the severe wind reports. If you have a black square, that means 65 knots plus. You can see they reissued this thunderstorm box over the same area overnight. Like, do you see how they reissued it? The severe thunderstorm. And in the vicinity of Omaha, so this circle here is a flooding event. This triangle this way, this purple one, is a tornado of unknown intensity. And that happened over here to the northeast. So this was all happening overnight. Right now I'm stopped at 6Z, which is 1 a.m. And you can see that, let me just back this up a little to bring something else to your attention. So as I was driving back, it didn't take long for those storms behind me to put down some hail. So let me let this run. So you see where I'm going home over here. Once I get home, within like an hour, there's hail reports right along that road. So hail wasn't far behind where I was trying to get out of the way. I'll let this run through, I don't know, 6Z, maybe just a little bit further. And you can see what was going on overnight. Down here in the southwest, boy, these storms were really strong with winds and hail. This is a tornado box over here, tornado watch box. All right, so I'm going to stop it there. And this is the damage reports through about 9Z. So evidently there was a tornado that was observed by many storm chasers way out here to the west, near Grand Island, Nebraska. And I was 70 miles away. So this happened about 7 minutes before I spotted my funnel cloud, which obviously was a different storm, but it was that far away. So again, okay, so here were the storm reports. There were plenty of wind reports and some hail all along that front where I was located. And let's take a look at verification. So this enhanced area where they were predicting some damaging hail and damaging winds, that verified pretty well. Those storms did get cooking, moving in there. And then you can see where I was kind of in the mix of things here in Omaha as these storms progressed through Omaha, Nebraska. And here were the tornadoes that happened that day. So you can see there was one tornado way the heck out here in northwest Kansas. extreme northwest. And then this one happened overnight. So Nebraska, 9Z. So this was actually 4 a.m. Let's see, subtract 5 from 10, you have 5. So it was about almost 5 a.m. in the morning that this one happened. I think that brings my storm chasing to a close. I can't believe how long this video was, given that there really wasn't a tornado that I was chasing. However, that leads to the next day where, well, all hell breaks loose. So until then, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.